Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the GD Report. I'm G.
And I am D.
And we've got a really good show lined up today. We've got a couple special guests that were on before the election and on election night. So this is our official election recap. But before we bring our guests on, D, do you have any thoughts about this election and how it went?
Well, since we last talked, we now have a president and vice president-elect because the networks and based on the projections, there's been a call. And so we've got President-elect Joe Biden and Vice President-elect Kamala Harris. And I just want to say that it's a hard-fought election. We're not seeing the type of transition cooperation that we would hope to see in this kind of thing. So Trump's not taking the news very well. But I don't want to focus on that. We can hopefully have another podcast on that at some point.
Right.
Before we do, I'd like to focus on just a couple of the historic aspects of the election.
Yep.
Joe Biden has now, as the counts continue to come in and be finalized, received more votes for president than any candidate in the history of our country.
Well, they both did, right? Didn't Trump?
True.
Yeah.
But Joe Biden obviously received the most. Yeah.
Right.
So that's like, the Cleveland Indians, they were in second place in the World Series against the Cubs too. So
right.
But my point in saying that is obviously it's a historic win. He almost 5 million more popular votes than President Trump, but also the kudos to the American people for the turnout. It's one of the highest turnouts we've had in a long time. And so people really stepped up and voted. So that's a historic aspect. And then another thing is Kamala Harris, a big groundbreaking aspect there, the first female vice president, and then also first woman of color, of African and South Asian descent. With her parents, but just historic all the way around. You can see a lot of excitement. There's always going to be disappointment on the losing side, but you can see a lot of excitement around the world. And I think it's a good day. And I think one of the strengths, and that's what I hope to see in the next few weeks in the peaceful transfer of power as the election results are certified, is that's one of the strengths of our democracy is the peaceful transfer of power in the presidency.
Right. Yeah. So, I've been watching Mr. Trump's reactions and the things that he's doing, and he certainly doesn't seem to be wanting to do anything peacefully.
Right.
So,
well, hopefully it's just a case of butthurt and sour grapes, and hopefully he'll get over that. And by the time we do the next podcast, I hope there's a stronger transition plan in place on his side. I know the Biden-Harris team has already got their transition team in place, and I believe right before we came on, there's AP reports that Joe Biden's going to name Ron Klain, his former chief of staff, as vice president, as his first chief of staff as president.
Right. There are a couple of dates that we ought to think about too. December 8th is when the election has to be certified across the country. The U.S. Constitution requires that. And then December 14th is when the electors actually cast their vote and the president is actually elected. So those are two key dates we'll want to keep an eye on and see how things are going as those get close.
Yeah, less than a month away on those.
Yeah.
Then January 5th is another big date we'll talk about soon, I'm sure, with
Right.
the balance of the U.S. Senate in play with the two Georgia runoffs.
Right.
Which I think we mentioned. I'm going to say we did, even if we didn't, but I'm pretty sure I mentioned it and you did too on one of our Senate podcasts that it could come down to Georgia, and
Yep.
it could come down to those two seats, both being runoffs.
Right. And speaking of the Senate, the AP today called the Alaska Senate race for Dan Sullivan, which we called that on election night. So I'm not sure what took them so long, but
Well, how can they do that? Because the counting's not finished.
well, that's something we're going to get into here in a little bit. But as you and I have discussed many times, it's an algorithm they use, and they know where the votes came in from, and it's kind of a complicated formula, but it's usually pretty accurate.
Yeah.
I think the most famous time it wasn't was in Florida in 2000.
Right.
So we all know how that turned out. So without further ado, then let's bring in our guest. We've got TK. He's a happy Biden supporter at this point, and we've got Dahlia, and she's in favor of Mr. Trump, and she thinks the election has gone awry in several areas, and she's going to tell us about that. So we'll bring those in right now. Hello, Dahlia. Hello, TK. Dahlia, you're sideways.
Hello. Why is that happening?
There you go. Nope. There you go. There we go. Welcome, guys. So
Welcome back.
There's D. Am I coming in too dark? It might, like I said earlier, it might be a good thing.
Oh, you're fine, brother.
No, G and I, we're the guys who have the faces for radio. So
Right.
I used to say that when I was on the radio.
Right.
And it's even truer today.
Well, hey guys, welcome back, and it's been a while since we all been together. I think election night, and appreciate you guys being on so long on election night. I had to bow out with a little bit of health problems going on, but welcome back to both of you two. And we thought we'd kind of start with just your overall thoughts. Each of you give you some equal time. Start with you, Dahlia. Just overall impressions, thoughts after where we are now after the election. Having a little trouble with your audio. It's a little.
How's that? Is that better?
Yeah, that's
Better.
better.
There you go.
Much better.
Okay. So basically, I mean, it's a mess. It's kind of crazy the way everything is going, but I'm holding out hope that everything will, happen the way it's supposed to. There's a reason that we have a legal system. There's a reason we have recounts. I know the Democrats were ready with over 600 attorneys, and they were ready to do exactly what we're doing now. So let's see what happens as we move forward.
Great. TK, what about you? Overall thoughts?
Well, after hearing that, I don't even know that I can even, I mean, we're talking about two different realities, I mean, we're talking about a guy who's won by now, 5.2 million votes. Looks like 306 electoral votes, but we keep hearing that Trump won. Those 40 lawsuits that we've already lost, we're going to file another 40 or 50 or however many it takes. We're going to spend $20 million and sue the Democrats into oblivion. That's their exact quote from the RNC.
Who said that?
I don't have his name in front of me, but he works he's like the chief of staff for the RNC, but I can find it. But it really makes no difference what his name is. The point is it's an alternate universe. Trump has lost. He's lost by a landslide. It's a mandate, just as big a size of a mandate as he claimed last time. But it's funny how when that happens on the other side of the coin, it's never a mandate. Biden's going to end up with 306 electoral votes, winning by 5 million, over 5 million. It'd probably be closer to 6 by the time it's all said and done. Trump last time got 306 electoral votes, even though he lost the election by 3 million and talked about it being a mandate for 4 years. So like I said, we're talking about two different realities. One is a reality, one's an alternate reality, and it goes back to what they've been doing for 4 years. It's an alternate set of facts. Everything that doesn't agree with Trump is false, is fake news. It's gotten to a point of ridiculous. We're going to get ourselves into a national security problem very quickly, just like what happened in 2000. The 9/11 Commission actually came out after the fact and said that the delayed transition, and that only took up to December, and at that point we were only talking about one state and 500 votes. Now, Trump's wanting to sue in 10 different states, whatever it is. Oddly enough, they all have Republicans in power. Georgia, supposedly there's this big coup in Georgia.
They do not all have Republicans in power. What are you talking about?
Georgia, the governor, the lieutenant governor, the secretary of
That's
state. all
one. You
Republicans.
just said 9 states. You
Okay,
said 9
Arizona.
states.
Arizona, governor, lieutenant governor,
Wait.
secretary of state, all Republicans. Arizona. Hey, even in Pennsylvania. The problem in Pennsylvania with this long the long
we're
count in
living-
Pennsylvania, Republicans brought that on themselves. The Republican legislature decided not to touch the ballots until election day. A lot of other states counted them early. The reason the Pennsylvania count took longer is because the Republican legislature decided to
Let me
not
ask you a
touch the
question.
ballot.
Let me
And
ask you a
the
question.
guy that's on 60 Minutes, okay, the city commissioner, whatever his job is, who's in charge of counting those ballots in Philadelphia, that was almost in tears because he's getting death threats from idiots. He's a Republican city commissioner. Republican again. Like I said, you got all these people that are Republicans. If
he was on 60
ridiculous.
Minutes,
It's ridiculous.
if he was on 60 Minutes, then I mean,
Oh, well,
then
it's got to be
over.
fake news,
Then
right?
the election's over. I mean, it's got to be.
It's got to be fake
Listen,
news if a
listen.
Republican came on 60
When
Minutes.
we
and said something.
when we hung up the phone last Tuesday, and if you
Yeah.
need me to if we need to rewind the video,
What is that?
you and G thought it was over. then we
What
all
does
went to-
last Tuesday have to
I
do with
finish?
today?
Can I finish
Zero.
a sentence, please?
Zero.
Please let me just finish.
I knew this
when
was
we
going to
went-
happen tonight.
When we went to bed, we thought they were still counting, and it looked like it was going to be a blowout. We woke
Okay.
up in the morning
not a
and
blowout.
we found out that they stopped counting. I would like to know, why did they stop counting?
Nobody
Well,
stopped counting.
The experts
stopped.
told us,
Nobody stopped counting.
the experts
They're still
told
counting
us
today.
that was going to be the case, that when we went to bed, it would
Yes,
probably look like Trump was going to lead. But as the votes kept coming in, and D even said it before he bowed out, that there were a lot of votes to
He
be
made a
counted,
good call in Georgia.
and a lot of them were still in Democratic strongholds. So it isn't over. Now, I think that's one of the last things he said before he bowed
Well,
out.
I mean,
So-
Yeah.
we can talk about this on Monday or Tuesday of previous to the election day. Everybody thought Biden was going to win. It doesn't really
Nobody
matter
did.
what anybody thought. It doesn't really matter what it looked like on a particular day. Now the votes are in.
they're not all in. If the votes were in, we wouldn't still be counting votes, would we?
We're
Are
in
we still
98 and
counting?
98 and 99% in every one of those states. Every
Did
one.
anybody announce? Did
Every
anybody
single
announce
state.
a recount today?
Georgia
Did anybody
did.
announce a recount
Please.
today?
Please.
Yeah.
Right, but
So that,
states have, so
No
So
recount in history has ever turned more than a few hundred votes, ever in history.
nobody in history ever got over
It's one
70
ridiculous.
million
It's one
votes.
ridiculous.
Now we have
It's one
two
ridiculous.
candidates that have.
We've got a petulant child who's going to put our national security at risk. Like I said, it happened already. The 9/11.
I know. And you know
attacks
what?
happened a few months, months after a delay in the transition. And that delay in the
Right.
transition wasn't even close to what we're seeing by this idiot.
I know. And now, you know what? It's amazing. On Wednesday morning, COVID disappeared. That's
No, it didn't.
incredible.
No, it hasn't.
COVID is
There's
gone.
record-
No, it didn't.
There's
Hey,
record
guys.
numbers.
I saw people in the
Record
streets and they were
numbers,
sharing
record numbers of
champagne.
cases, record numbers of cases,
Yeah.
record numbers of deaths, record numbers of hospitalizations yesterday.
It's
So
all,
why
that's-
are all of your side out in the streets sharing bottles of champagne? Explain that to me. I don't understand.
Hey,
why did your side
it's
go to
okay for
Trump's
y'all to
rallies
do
with
it.
no
Why can't
mask?
they celebrate? If they want to risk themselves,
Be-
that has
because
nothing to
my-
do with the actual facts of the
Be-
COVID numbers.
because-
That's people going
because-
out in the streets and celebrating. If they want to and they get sick, that's their choice. That's their choice. Y'all had no
Exactly.
problem with it
Thank
when it was your choice.
I have no problem with it, period. I don't mind that they're out in the street celebrating. You exactly just said what I've been arguing. Let us make our decision. Don't tell me I have to wear a mask. Don't
But
tell
if-
me to give up my
you just-
job. Don't
you
tell me to
just-
give up my income.
Okay,
Just
okay,
demean
okay, let's
people.
get,
You just
let's
demean
get back,
people that are
let's
out
get,
celebrating in the
guys,
streets on Saturday.
let's,
When y'all were out celebrating on the streets, it was okay.
Okay,
let's get
let's,
back on, let's
When
get
y'all
back,
go to Trump super spreader rallies and events.
Dahlia, TK.
let's get back on, let's get back on, try to keep it on the election. I get, emotions are high.
I've been hearing this COVID disappeared, but that's such a, I mean, that's just idiotic of a statement as Trump hadn't disappeared.
So-
Both of them
So
are
let
opposite
me
of
let
each
me
other.
interject here for a second. So I think where the Democrats are trying to look for the right word, confounded maybe, is that there aren't enough votes left to be counted to
Right.
overturn the stated results
Nowhere
in any
close.
of the states that are still out.
Nowhere close.
There,
So-
okay, can I
wait,
address that?
Let me finish.
Okay.
And so historically, when that has occurred, and the media, which has called the election for the last 60 years, the Associated Press, and I've heard people say, since when does the media get to call the race? They've done that for the last 60 years. Have they sometimes made mistakes? Yes, Florida 2000, they made a mistake there, and they had to retract it and call it again after it was all said and done. But for the most part, they're spot on. And
Yeah.
they've called these races. They've called Arizona. I don't think they've called Georgia yet.
They haven't called Arizona.
The
The Secretary of State today did.
They're actually closer to calling Georgia than Arizona right now. It's the only place where Trump has gained a few thousand votes.
Georgia's recounting, so there
Right.
is no.
And so Georgia, and I know that Mr. Trump disparaged the leadership there, but the
Sure.
leadership's all Republican. In
Yeah.
fact, the two senators that are now find themselves in a runoff have asked him to resign because there was widespread voter fraud, which he says
Trump,
there's not.
There's an article today talks about Trump called Loeffler and Perdue's camps both and told them to get together and attack the Secretary of State and see if they couldn't get him.
Yeah.
and to me-
Where'd you read that? Where'd you
Look,
read that?
What difference does it
You're
make?
welcome to look it up. I'm not going to fall into the Trump
listen,
trap of having to give you links to everything.
Listen, no, why not? Why not? You want to know something? Did you?
Okay,
Let me ask you.
Let me ask you.
have
Are they
have any of
Republicans? That's the
have
question.
any
What
of
did you
the three
just
of
say?
you have
What did
any?
you just say? Are they Republicans or not? Did Kelly
have any-
Loeffler and David
TK,
Perdue
let
come
her
out and
finish.
attack
TK, let her
Have-
finish.
Republican Secretary of State? That's the question. It's not who's got what link, who told you what day was it. The Republicans that are running in the runoff in Georgia both came out and attacked their Republican Secretary of State and talked about him resigning. Okay. As G said, also the governor and the lieutenant governor are both Republicans. Secretary of State's a Republican. The
and to
guy who
me-
they're all attacking now.
To me,
The point is, they're all
Raffensperger is
Republican.
trying to do everything above board. So the
Right.
state law says if you're below 0.5%, you can, which Biden currently sits at 0.3, you can ask for a recount.
Right. There's going to be a recount. There's
Now,
no
the
question about that.
The way they normally do the recount is they pull a sample of ballots, they compare the signatures, make sure they're all valid, and they use math to extrapolate
Right.
how that race would go, and they declare a winner. That's how they normally do it. But
Right.
because this year's race was so close, what Raffensperger has decided to do is hand count every ballot and see where the results fall. But with a lead like Biden's, I doubt there's going to be enough votes changed to overturn the outcome.
There's
And
never been one.
Okay.
There's never been a recount.
Okay, I think
more than a few hundred votes.
Hey guys, I think Dahlia had a question for the three of us. Let's have her ask that question, and then I've got a question for the panel about back to the election night. So Dahlia, go right ahead.
How many of you have had your Facebook posts flagged in the last few days, or your Twitter account blocked in the last few days? Anything like that happening to you guys?
well, I don't
I haven't
Facebook or
either.
Twitter much, so I wouldn't know.
I'm not
Okay.
on Twitter. I'm
Yeah,
not on Twitter very much.
that happened to me because I posted an article about it actually was an article, and then it was a copy of the video of the Secretary of State or the election director, I forgot which it was, and it had to do with the overturning of the votes that the Dominion software had made an error in one particular county in Michigan. And it was the actual video from the news press conference, and it got flagged by Facebook as being misrepresentation or partly false or something. And I mean, it's incredible. And that was literally what happened. And I'm not saying that's happened everywhere. And I'm not saying that when the counting is done, that Trump is going to win. I never said that. What I'm saying is the votes that are legal votes need to be counted in full by everybody. And the votes that are questionable, the votes that there are questions about, those need to be addressed. And that is what I think that the attorneys for Donald Trump are going after right now. And either it's going to happen or it's not. And if it doesn't, then you know what? Joe Biden is my president. All right. I'm saying it now. I'm not going to put on a pink pussy hat and run around DC crying like a little baby. Okay. I'll accept it. It'll suck. I'll do everything I can for the next 2 years to make sure that the next election does better for us. I'm already doing that here in Colorado. I mean, listen, Colorado, we're worse than California now. I mean, honestly,
I was gonna say, I thought you'd be packing. You said you were moving out of Colorado.
Wait, can I please say something? You guys are gonna laugh. I swear to God, I took pictures of it. I'll send it to you. Did I not say to you that I'll switch with you and I'll move to Texas?
Yeah.
Ask me how many ads came up on Facebook the next day with ranch land in Texas and different places. I swear to God, I'm
telling
like,
you
oh
what,
my God.
You got to be careful what you say on here, I guess.
Well, and
I'm telling you.
I'm telling you, these microphones on our computers, phones, and our
It's
home
scary. I
assistants,
couldn't believe
they're
it.
on all
I
the
took
time.
screenshots. I meant to start with that, but it's true. I swear to God.
No, I think we have big brothered ourselves with all these doorbell cameras and our cell phones and tablets.
You don't want to move down there. It's hot and humid, and in 4 years, it's going to be blue.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
that'll drive her crazy. I will say this though: we've had Indian summer all week. This is damnedest. For the middle of November, we've had 75 and 6 degrees with 2 or 3
we're the
mile
same
an
way
hour
in Oklahoma. Like the week
week.
before last, right
I
before
just
the
came off the
election,
golf course.
we had an ice storm the week before the election, and then now it's sunny and warm. Okay, so quick question for the panel, and we'll go around. What do you think? What was the biggest surprise for you on election night? Is there one thing that stood out? And I'll give you 2. If you're like me, you can't pick one, and you want to pick 2, that's okay. TK, we'll start with you. What was the biggest surprise for you?
I'll admit to back to what we were talking about on election night. I was thinking it was almost deja vu all over again. I did not fully grasp, I guess, the power of that mail-in ballot in this pandemic. When I saw 600,000 votes in Pennsylvania, I was in shock. And he's run and like I say, the mail-in ballots, it's come back to light that he's at this point, Biden. I think today they counted a few, or at least they turned in the numbers on a few extras. They've been counting, I guess, nonstop. But he's gone from 600,000 behind to now 53,000 ahead. And opening, they really expected to be 70 to 75,000, I think, at the end of the day.
Got it. Dahlia,
so that was something that definitely shocked me. That the numbers. Okay, the other places, you made the call on Georgia, and I was one saying I don't know about that. I can't hardly believe Georgia's going to go that way. I thought there was a decent chance in Arizona because of the Latin population out there. That's one of the things I think that on election night, the pundits, if you will, they kept lumping together Cubans in Miami-Dade with the Mexicans in Arizona and calling that the Latin vote. And I thought, well, wait a minute, that's so totally different. The Cubans in Miami are almost all going to vote Republican. They came from a Castro regime, and even the ones coming out of South America with Venezuela and some of those other places. So they tend heavily to be Republican. Whereas Mexicans, if you will, from Mexico tend to be a lot more liberal. And so the fact that we're lumping those groups together was kind of strange to me because this idea that, oh, Miami-Dade went a lot more red than everybody expected, so Arizona's going to be a problem. Well, it's two totally different.
Absolutely.
It's not a
Absolutely. Yeah.
monolithic vote.
All right, Dahlia, what about you? Big surprise? Anything
Well,
big surprise for you on election night?
Well, I'm not going to say it was a surprise because I sort of anticipated it, but I disagree with your assessment that this was, some big blue wave. The Democrats did not do nearly as well down the ticket in a lot of places, certainly not in the House, certainly not in the Senate.
No.
And
Yeah, it was a good night for Republicans.
It was a very good night for Republicans.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Overall.
It wasn't a blue wave by any means.
There are 20, well, and you said mandate earlier, so I think that sort of negates a mandate when you've got 20 women, female Republicans that are joining, the House of Representatives. That's pretty damn exciting.
Was 306 electoral votes a mandate for Trump?
No.
And losing by 3 million?
He
All right.
said it was.
Right. G, I'm interested in your take on this.
Yeah,
G,
so-
what was your big surprise?
Well, my surprise was the numbers. So even though we had record turnout, only 63% of the registered voters voted. So we're far behind.
Which is amazing.
Right. I mean, we're far behind other countries that have a democratic process. So, we've got 40% or 37% of the electorate sitting on the sidelines.
Well, let me ask
do
you,
you
not
think
bothering to vote.
do you think
That
the
would be
electoral
interesting.
college situation has something to do with tamping down the turnout as far as total votes? Because like we've talked about before, it really only comes down to about 4 or 5 states.
Well, I can tell you,
if you're
I
in
work with
California, are you really going to stand in line for 3 or 4 hours to vote in
well,
California?
you
No,
didn't have to this year. Almost everybody.
Well, this
got
year's a little different.
early,
Yeah, but I'm just saying,
But I work
in
with
these
several
areas-
people.
areas that don't really matter, and oddly enough, sadly enough, Texas still turned out to be one.
Well,
There's so many of
you
these
go
areas
vote.
that
You
that are
go
not-
vote every year, even though you're in a red state.
Right.
D votes every year, even though he's in a red state. Dahlia votes every year, even though Colorado
You do
appears
blue
no
state
longer
now.
to be purplish and more
Well,
bluish.
we're all
So
admittedly pretty anal about politics, but I'm just saying your average person, and a
Well-
lot more people vote. A lot more people vote in the presidential election anyway. We know the off years are
Right.
are lesser.
yeah, it's
And
hard
the
to get.
sad thing, like around here, the municipal elections in Dallas, 8 and 9% turnout. I mean, it's tragic.
Well, I
you
can
know.
tell you, I work with some people, and I've specifically asked, if they voted, and I don't ask them who they voted for because to me that's their own business. But I talked to a lot of people that said, there's at least a dozen people that I work with that said they didn't vote. And when I asked them why, they said it doesn't really matter whether I vote or not.
Yeah,
And
a
that's
lot of
how they
people, a lot
feel.
of people think that way
Wow.
about it.
That's sad.
There's one advantage to not voting. If you don't
But
vote,
back to-
you don't
I'll
get called
agree
for
with-
jury
I
duty.
agree with Dahlia and G both. As far as the overall election, it's not an election that the Democrats can crow about. Maybe they put too many eggs in one basket, and maybe they were fortunate enough that Trump was a known quantity this time over last time, and probably the cybersecurity experts were probably a little bit better this time because they were more prepared, or whatever you want to call it. But,
All right,
but
I'm gonna-
down ballot races. Believe me, losing the Senate is a big deal, right? And now they obviously have a chance to tie it up in Georgia, and that's going to be one of the most ridiculous things you've ever seen over the next couple of months.
If I lived in Georgia, I'd be on vacation for the next month for sure.
They're predicting $300 million will go into those 2 races. $300 million.
Well,
I mean,
Jamie
think
Harrison spent 100 and lost.
Well, hey, I'm gonna
I was still getting.
I'm gonna
ads
jump
from
in here. I'm gonna jump in here because I want to get my big election surprise
Oh, I'm
because
sorry.
you three are a bunch of narcissists and you don't want to hear about me. I'm kidding. No, if I would get a little bit granular on the Senate races, I was surprised. Probably the one seat that surprised me the most was that Susan Collins lived for another.
No question. I was flabbergasted by that.
And I think part of why I was surprised by it was because 2 things. There's, Maine is very independent, so it's not totally shocking that there was ticket splitters. but most states, there wasn't a ton of ticket splitting. And then also nobody really, I mean, President Trump kind of had it with her because of her votes, and she wasn't going to vote for didn't vote for the Supreme Court nominee. And in some of the Axios reporting and some of those where he was talking about at one of his fundraisers where he said that there were certain Senate candidates he was not going to campaign for. He didn't name who, but I kind of got the feeling, and again, it's just my gut feeling, that Susan Collins was one of the people he was talking about. And so I was surprised that she lived for another day.
And won handily. It wasn't even close.
Wasn't even close. So a lot of ticket splitters there.
I'll tell you where the ticket splitters really were more prominent is North Carolina. So they voted for a Republican president, a Democratic governor, and a Republican senator.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think Cal Cunningham maybe, stepped on his own thing there with those secting pictures coming up.
Text, the text messages.
As Dee and I talked about earlier, he not only did he screw his wife over, but he screwed all the rest of us Democrats over.
Yeah, no question.
Yeah.
Oh, you love that.
Jamie Harrison needs to take a long look in the mirror too. Like you were talking about, he raised like $150 million. Some ungodly number that's never been raised.
Wants to weigh in.
Now, I have a question. I have a question for you guys. Obviously the big Democrat Zoom meeting that got leaked the other day with sort of the postmortem that they had. And there was a lot of talk about, we can't say defund the police anymore. We can't say, certain words anymore. There were a lot of moderate Democrats that seemed very upset and felt like they could have done a lot better had the party had the party not sort of gone a little bit more to the left than they normally would. And so now I'm hearing, the AOC side of the party going, wait a second, we just did all this stuff for you. Now you guys have to pay up. And the other ones are like, no, we can't go that far to the left or we're going to lose again.
They won't.
So how do you guys feel about that? I'm just curious.
Biden actually he came straight out. I mean, the two things that he's done against that wing, if you will, if you want to call it that. I mean, in the primaries, he came out and said he's not for Medicare for all. He's for Medicare for all with a public option. He wants to, work on Obamacare, make it better. He wants to add a public option. He's not Medicare for all. That was a pretty big deal at the time because everybody in the primary was hard running to Medicare for all. And then when the defund the police thing came out, that was, we got Frank Luntz on that one again. I mean, Republicans definitely are the king of messaging. And Frank Luntz has been kicking our ass for 25 years with his wordplay. And we're stupid. I told him the first day I heard the first person that said defund the police to me, I said, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. If you say that, you're an idiot. Right. If you can't go and say rethink policing, retrain police, something like that. But defund police, that's the craziest damn thing I've ever heard of. Well,
I think
Biden came out against it. Biden was very adamant about, I am not for defunding the police, period.
Right. So I think, in Colorado, the GOP chairman here was Dick Wadhams. Remember him?
I know him well.
And he got his butt spanked by the Democrats. And what did the GOP do? They kicked him to the curb. Well, by any evaluation, the DNC got their butt spanked, and I think they need new leadership. They need to.
Do you think Pelosi is going to lose her job?
No. No chance. Ooh. But I do think the Democrats need to take a hard look in the mirror. Like I said, and look, Jamie Harrison, he was up against it. I mean, you're talking about a race. It was easy for the left to get excited about that race. Let's knock off Lindsey Graham because, believe me, I mean, obviously Lindsey Graham needs to be knocked off by, I don't care if it's by somebody man in the moon. I mean, this guy, anyway, the point being, Jamie raised $150 million. He supposedly was tied or neck and neck. He got beat by 10, 12 points. Okay. Susan Collins, on the other hand, like you said, she had no chance of winning. I mean, for 6 months, she's been 15 points behind in the polls. And that was her high water days. And she ends up winning by 10, 11 points. I mean, it's not even close in those two races.
I
And
think
those are
we
the-
can all agree, we must all be in agreement that every pollster needs to fire everyone that works for them and start all over again.
Well, at the end of the day, they're going to be close on the national poll. The state polls and these I don't know what you want to call them. They're not really Senate district polls. The state polls and the other polls inside the states are terrible. Okay. But on the other hand, the campaigns themselves, the polling they have, and I've been involved in a few over the years, they get down to, county level, down to precinct level, things like that. And they're pretty damn good. And that's why it was interesting. After we hung up that night, I was depressed. I told Ken Mulberg, a good friend of mine here in Dallas, as a judge, and we've been doing this together for 40 years. And I told him, I said, it's almost feels like deja vu all over again of, Union Station down there in 2016. I said, this is the damnest thing I've ever seen. Pennsylvania's got me just shell shocked. And he said, well, supposedly the Biden people are really encouraged over their numbers in Pennsylvania. And he's very tied in, and locally and nationally. And he said, don't despair. And sure enough, about 45 minutes after we got off, I think, Biden came on, and that was the calmest, most reassuring guy that was behind that and those kind of numbers. And I was thinking to myself, maybe Mulberg's right. Maybe the campaign themselves have the internals that are making them feel pretty confident about these calls that they're making inside the campaign. And same thing happened with Bush in 2000, 2004. We talked about it before. In 2000, it was crazy how Karl Rove knew almost down to the precinct what it was going to come down to in Florida, and they knew it was going to be Florida. And then in 2004, it flipped back to Ohio, if you remember that tight race, and they were there in Ohio, and they had the numbers down to the nth degree. And it's amazing. The campaign's numbers and polling, or whatever you want to call it, are always almost spot on. And there's no question there's a big gap in the state polling versus the national polling. The national polling is not going to be too far off.
My favorite Karl Rove moment is when he was on Fox News the night Obama got elected the first time, and he was dialing in on counties.
He was running up and down the hall.
And no, he's dialing in on counties, and he said, these counties haven't come in yet. And their host turns to him and said, is this just math you do for yourself? But Dahlia has a hard stop. So
I was gonna say we're getting close to wrapping up. I think my big takeaway is that we're a closely divided country.
Yep.
And I think in 2018, there were some congressional districts in there that the Democrats overperformed in, and some of those have been won back. You look at the states that Biden won. A lot of those, the way his path obviously was flipping states that Trump had carried last time. So very closely divided, very closely and evenly divided. Before we go tonight, I just want to say today's Veterans Day, and just want to tip of the hat to
Absolutely.
all those
Absolutely.
Because at the end of the day, we're all Americans.
That's right. My favorite veterans, my dad. He's still up in Miami, Oklahoma on the farm, and probably not watching this, but he learned a lot from him. But there's a lot of great veterans out there that fought and served, so that we can sit here and we can argue,
right,
and then we can have peaceful transfers of power and those kinds of things.
Well, as G was saying earlier, that 37% that's sit at home, they need somebody to jerk them up,
right,
and talk to them in the face and say, hey, guys have died over this opportunity.
Right. There have been times in my life that I've thought, I really don't. I mean, Colorado makes it easy now because my ballot comes in the mail and I can fill it out. But when I lived in LA and when I lived in Atlanta, there were a couple of times when I thought I just would skip it and not vote. And every time that picture of that Chinese man in Tiananmen Square facing off those tanks, I thought, you know what? If he can put it on the line for that, at least I can do is go vote.
It seems like 100 years ago now, but I had a poli-sci professor, and he was one of the sharpest guys I've probably ever met. And he said, when people talk about their vote doesn't count, and all the way back to 1960, John Kennedy won the election over Richard Nixon by what amounted to an average of 1 vote per precinct.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
when you go back that far, 60 years, and it matters. It really matters. I mean, obviously, we can have our differences, but at the end of the day, voting matters. And
yep.
I just wish we could get more people interested in it as we are. Maybe not to our level, but
Yeah.
We don't need anybody else like us. Sorry, no.
We don't need more of this. That's right.
So before we sign off, though, I want to start with Dahlia. Dahlia, what do you look for in the coming days and weeks, and maybe even into December?
Well, I obviously I do not agree with all of your outlooks on how this is going to turn out. I think it's not a matter of counting votes. It's a matter of finding which votes cannot be counted. And I think there's a lot of those. And I think that's what they're concentrating on. And, it's funny, I have so many friends. I've already been to 3 meetings since we last spoke with different groups that I'm a part of. And we're just trying to start concentrating on doing things locally because there's really not much I can do nationally. But Trump was out playing golf on Saturday. So obviously he's really not that worried about it. So I'm not going to be that worried about it.
I do have one question I want to ask you real quick. So Trump is asking people to donate to his defense fund, right? And 60% of that is diverted to his campaign fund.
Well, if you read the fine print, it's pretty sad.
I'm not familiar with everything with the money. So I won't comment on that. I don't know about that.
Okay.
But
you might check that out. So the fine print's
pretty damning on that. 60% is going to this new PAC that Trump is has formed for his future endeavors. That's 60%. 40%.
Okay, I'll have to look into that. I don't know anything about that.
Going to the RNC. There was they originally sold it. I think they've started getting away from that because there's been a lot of talk about it. But they originally sold it as his defense fund, and so that's.
I got a couple of emails from a couple of different groups, so I don't know which one is legit. I honestly I haven't looked into that because I'm certainly not giving a dime.
The latest I heard about it was that you have to get to a donation of $5,000 before any of your money starts going to the actual lawsuuts. Okay.
I don't know. I don't know anything about it.
There's really some strange wording in the fine print, but that's basically what it.
All right, TK, what are you looking for over the next week or so?
I'm looking for some Republicans to show some spine. They never have. I don't understand why they're so scared of a lame duck. But somebody there are people. Matter of fact, your boy up there, Langford, came out this afternoon and said, look, if Joe Biden's not getting those security briefings by Friday, I'm going to step in and there's going to be hell to pay. Well, and this is a hard right guy. This is a guy who defended the Trump rally in Tulsa. Okay.
Yeah, but I obviously don't have a real high opinion of him.
But that's actually my point. I'm
going to clench his fist, say, you better do that, President Trump, and Trump's going to laugh at him.
One of our former co-workers was his chief of staff for a while.
Yeah. All right.
My point was he's a pretty hardcore righty.
I get it. Yeah, I know.
That's the thing that's starting to bother. It's going to bother me if this drags on. I mean,
it's not over yet.
It's been over.
Okay.
So you know what? Then everybody take a break. Go enjoy Thanksgiving, and then we'll know something when the courts decide, and that's it. I mean, to keep saying, he needs to.
Here's the thing. The transition matters. It does matter to national security. It does matter.
And the transition will happen when the transition happens.
If you saw what happened at the
January.
Pentagon yesterday. We're talking about 5 people at the top of the Pentagon.
I don't care.
TK, we got to head out, but we got a couple of things we got to. D, what are you looking for in the next few days?
I'm looking for just continuation of the transition committee. We talked about on the intro. President-elect Biden is named as chief of staff, and we'll see more names come out, and then we'll start to see even though I gave TK a hard time, we'll start to see some of the Republican senators start cooperating more. We'll start getting security briefings, and then we'll transition. We'll have a certification in December. We'll have electoral college vote. Then we'll have the shit show, if I can say that, in Georgia on January 5th.
That's gonna be wild.
We'll have an inauguration, and we'll have a new president, new vice president, and a new Congress, and we'll hopefully get some things done with some cooperation, and more people will be encouraged to vote. That's what I'm looking for. All right, G man, what about you?
Well, I'm looking for not by this Friday, but by the next Friday. I'm looking for Donald John Trump to concede the election and admit that he got defeated.
All right.
I hope so for all of our sakes. You know,
Well,
And I'm hoping you're all wrong.
Well, and I will say this: I think shortly after he concedes, he announces his candidacy for 2024.
For 2024.
Oh, I
Yeah,
think
and
that's-
I am going to be happy to work on that
I don't think
campaign
there's
if
any
that's the
question.
case.
I
So,
don't think there's any question that that's been what's been going on since Saturday. There's no doubt in my mind that he's shoring up, keeping his base as fired up as possible.
Yep.
And
That's why all the Republicans are hanging tight. So
that's why they're scared. Yeah.
all right. Well, thank you both. TK,
Thank
Dahlia, thanks
you.
again for being here.
Yeah.
Oh,
thank
yeah.
you.
Love you, even though we disagree.
I love you too, but I'm never
Hey.
going to say Texas again.
Nice sweater. I love that
Thank
color.
you. Thank you.
All right.
All right, guys. Bye.
Hey guys, thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
See you next time on the GD Report.
good night, everybody.
Thanks for having me.